Hello, I am the Irish guy, and Jude Bellingham has ruined my summer. England were seconds away from being dumped out of the European Championships by Slovakia. This was so close to being the sequel to the Iceland horror film from 2016. You could already see it happening on the pitch. The likes of Declan Rice would crumple to the floor, looking like someone who had just seen his mum eaten by a hippo at the zoo. He would be what Jack Wilshere was in 2016, an Arsenal central midfielder seeing his reputation going up in flames. Jude Bellingham was going to aimlessly wander around the pitch with tears staining his cheeks, with fans throwing cups of Pepsi at his face. The word overrated splashed on the front of so many newspapers. This was so close to being an absolute England disaster. Christ, but losing to Slovakia. This was Iceland all over again. And I'm sorry, but you know what the most unjust thing about this fluke recovery was? It's that Gareth Southgate actually looked like he's now pulled off a tactical masterstroke. When he brought Ivan Toney on in the 94th minute, I thought it was an insult to the man. Right, but I wouldn't have been totally shocked if the Brentford striker had pulled a Carlos Tevez and just refused to come on. The game was crying out for another striker. I think it's almost criminal how Ollie Watkins was not introduced at half-time, but to bring on this Brentford beefcake when there was just 90 seconds of the match left, it looked about as weird as if Southgate chooses to barge into Subway and ask if they can sprinkle their own armpit hair all over his chicken and salad BLT. But no. Tony comes on and immediately causes chaos in the box, allowing Bellingham time and space to score an acrobatic bicycle kick, and in the final minute of extra time, his looping header sets up Harry Kane for the winner. That was a Tony master stroke. Ozzy, well done, Gareth, right? Right? But lads, I'm going to touch on why this England team are now scaring me, because they are giving me serious Portugal Euro 2016 vibes. But first, let's just talk about how there is something seriously wrong with the England team right now. It's actually bordering on a disgrace. England scored at the death in the second half yesterday, right? Okay then, let's talk about halves of football for a minute then. If Jude had not scored that special goal, then England would have failed to score in 12 of the previous 16 halves of football. Yeah, 16 halves of football spread out over 8 games against North Macedonia, Brazil, Belgium, Bosnia, Iceland, Serbia, Denmark, Slovenia, and Slovakia. During that run, you've needed 95th minute Bellingham equalisers to preserve draws against Belgium and Slovakia. That's hideous, isn't it? Lads, England's complete lack of Curtis Parker for the goal is actually not anything new. Because back in November of last year, tiny little Malta were travelling to Wembley and only left with a 2-0 defeat. Christ above, Enrico Pepe even put the ball into his own net. I'm not sure who he is, but I can only assume this Maltese centre-back probably sells chicken nuggets on the Gozo beach. But I actually think that Malta game perfectly proves how Southgate has actually left the England team in the same horrid spot as when he picked them up. Don't forget, his first game in charge was a boring 2-0 win over Malta too. I know, I was there outside the ground doing fan cams in what was my first ever YouTube job for the previous channel, which was not being named. I mean, sure, that was a completely different England team in 2016. Not a single one of that matchday squad are anywhere near the current one. I mean, the likes of Mikel Antonio were sitting on the bench. He's now a Jamaica international that's probably king of the Caribbean. As we speak, he's probably getting married to a mermaid. But different England teams, absolutely. But it's the exact same result. Meek 2-0 wins over a bunch of lads from Birkirkara and Valletta. Malta should be getting flattened 8-0 by England. Come on! They're barely an island. All they are is a set for Pirates of the Caribbean. Okay, sorry, that was mean. Malta's cool. But lads, this, against Slovakia, different personnel, sure, but ultimately it was still the same stale, out of ideas, tactical bird brain, slow and sluggish England team who didn't know what to do against Iceland in 2016. Southgate should not kid himself into thinking that he's producing anything better than the Hodgson days. Trust me, Gareth, you are not. I mean, for goodness sake, the man presided over defeat to Iceland last month. That one was arguably more embarrassing on paper because the 2016 loss was at least in a neutral venue in France. But last month, you let a bunch of Vikings rock up at Wembley on your home soil and leave with a win. And they didn't even have any star players in the squad. And he's back in 2016. One was a former Barcelona striker who played with Ronaldinho, and the other one would soon become a £50 million buy for Everton. I mean, less said about his career after that. Lads, can you imagine that Bellingham did not pop up with that sensational goal last night? If he was a lesser human being who did not have ultimate rock star confidence after a Champions League winning season at Real Madrid, if he had instead controlled the ball on his chest and just tamely laid it off for Conor Gallagher to blaze it over the bar, then Southgate, he would have been fired for the players even at the stadium. After nearly 8 years in the job, he'd been forced to sit in front of the media with his bottom lip trembling, like a 10-year-old who's been told that he's only allowed to ask his neighbors for vegetables whilst trick-or-treating on Halloween. Southgate was this close to being absolutely destroyed. I mean, come on. All I've been hearing all week is how England are in the weaker side of the draw and must surely be reaching the final. Do you realize how arrogant that actually sounds? How can England speak about anything weak when there's a team who starts so poorly in every single match? When you think of the amount of attacking talent Southgate has at his disposal, let me just tell you how hideous England have begun matches ever since the last World Cup, just in case nobody has truly realised. Okay then, over the last year, since September, these have been the England scores at halftime in their games. England 0, Australia 0, England 1, Italy 1, England 1, Malta 0, North Macedonia 1, England 0, England 0, Brazil 0, England 1, Belgium 2, England 0, Bosnia and Herzegovina 0, England 0, Iceland 1, Serbia 0, England 1, Denmark 1, England 1, England 0, Slovenia 0, England 0, Slovakia 1. Do you see how utterly horrid that is? Over the last 9 months or so, the first half of England matches have been about as exciting to watch as any episode of Grey's Anatomy. I mean, some of the other sides in this weak side of the draw, in that time frame, the Netherlands have had 3 4-0 wins against Scotland, Canada, and Iceland. Austria have beaten Germany 2-0 and Turkey 6-1. Turkey themselves have beaten Germany 3-2 on German soil. But England, the fans think they should be guaranteeing themselves a place in the final now, when Southgate is serving up such managerial filth. But you know what? I'm still a little worried, because England, they're sneaking through, despite playing absolutely hideously. England at the Euros have had nothing but luck. Yeah, so did Portugal, Euro 2016. Let's not pretend that their manager, Fernando Santos, was some genius tactician. The bloke was a seriously bang-average boss who spent most of his coaching career in Greece. Honestly, during his times at AEK Athens, Panathinaikos, PAOK, and even the actual Greece job before taking the Portugal gig, I'm not sure how a Portuguese manager survived life in Greek football for that long. When Greece had recently beaten Portugal in the final of Euro 2004 on Portuguese soil, surely agreeing to go and live in that country must have been some sort of strange torture for the man. It would be like an English manager like Graham Potter now choosing to go and work in Iceland. You're gonna get laughed at every day. Well, anyway, Santos is not a good manager. I know he lifted the Euro 2016 title with Portugal, but I mean, it's 8 years later and he's now the manager of Azerbaijan. Yeah, he was sacked after just 6 games as boss of Poland. And after that, he survived just 16 games as boss of Besiktas. And now he is managing a bunch of milkmen who really needed a 91st minute goal to beat Mongolia. Aren't Mongolia just a jungle filled with sheep? Well, they probably had a panther in goal. So like Southgate, he is not good either. He's also an unambitious defensive slug who is producing horrible results at Euro 2016 too. Christ, well, people talk about Southgate's array of sizzling talent, sure. Yeah, Santos had a 31-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo at his disposal. Somebody who was off the back of a 51-goal season for Real Madrid. And yet Portugal in the group stage 1-1 versus Iceland, 0-0 versus Austria, and 3-3 versus Hungary. Third in the group on 3 points. Any other Euro tournament and they'd have gone home. That was revolting. And yet, did anyone at all tip them to win the Euros that summer? I don't think you'd have found a single human being alive who after the group stage thought they'd win. Not even Ronaldo's own optimistic mum. Like England, they then get chucked in the easy side of the draw. I mean, lads, they avoided mega giants like Germany, Italy, Spain, France, England, and Ireland, all on the stronger side of the draw, whilst they were lumped in with the likes of Switzerland, Poland, Wales, Hungary, and Northern Ireland. Yeah, they then played Croatia in the first knockout round, 0-0 after 90 minutes, before winning in extra time. In the quarterfinal against Poland, 1-1 after 120 minutes, they squeaked through on penalties before then, in the semi-final, they play Wales. Sure, on paper it was Ronaldo versus Bale, but come on. A European Championship semi-final against the Welsh, a team coached by Chris Coleman, a future failed Sunderland boss. Similarly, it was 0-0 at halftime before Portugal eventually snuck through. It was such an uninspiring run to the final, and yet they still shell-shocked France, dragging them down to their grisly level before sucker punching them in extra time. Portugal were utterly dreadful that summer, but they still won the whole thing. So England, they are making me nervous. They really are. Well, as I already said in my prediction video, I don't think Slovakia suited England, and neither does having an easy side of the draw. I actually think that is the worst thing that could have happened to this bunch, to this downbeat bunch of petrified English Irish bunny rabbits, because a banana skin like Slovakia is something to be scared of. Look at the last Euros. The entire nation were woken up after beating Germany in the last 16. That is what the players needed. A game against a quality team like the Netherlands, because there would be less pressure if they lost. I mean, lads, losing to Holland would be tough to take, sure, but it's not a national embarrassment forever etched into the football history books. These players would not have had their careers killed because of it, but losing to Slovakia, that is a national shame. One of the lowest points in the nation's footballing history. Losing to Iceland at Euro 2016 had huge consequences and ramifications for a lot of the players. Look at the starting 11 that day. Look at how many of them were quickly finished at England level. Joe Hart is still lampooned as a national joke by many England fans because of the Iceland collapse. Unfairly, by the way. I mean, I think he was a top goalie in his day. But yeah, you could see it on the faces of those England players. The pressure on the whole nation when they're up against a side they know they should be beating. They just can't deal with it. They can't cope. In the same way they choked at the 2018 World Cup against Croatia. And don't forget, they were just a penalty shootout away from being dumped out of in the last 16 by a very average Colombia. England teams have always struggled with the pressure when they're given a crunch knockout tie against a team they really should be beating. Like in the last 16 of the 2006 World Cup, England's golden generation faced Ecuador, an Ecuador team whose star man played for Wigan. I remember the English media were bouncing to have avoided Germany. Surely they were going to smash them 5-0. Nah, it was a dour 1-0 England win. Again, 0-0 at halftime. I think England needed to be thrown to the tougher side of the draw to wake them up. But up next is Switzerland, and it's crazy. Go back to Euro 2004. Look at England's Group B. A very easy, winnable Group B against Croatia, France, and Switzerland. Yeah. If the Swiss win in the quarterfinals, Southgate's England will have successfully been knocked out of major tournaments by every single one of those Group B teams from 20 years ago. And really, just how embarrassing would that be? But are England, are they the next Portugal? I really, 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 really hope not. Anyway, that's it. What do you think? Let me know what do you think. How bad were England? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give a like, share, and subscribe as always. I'll talk to you in a while.